For centuries, we have been too quick to pick up our stones of judgment, particularly towards women and the vulnerable. Yes, this woman might have been caught in the very act, but adultery, by definition, involves two people or more, right? But only one person is brought forth by the crowd, right? And only one person's fate is being debated. And only one person is being used as a prop in another group's argument. So where is the man in this scenario? Right? The text doesn't mention him, doesn't bother to explain where he is. And that's because this story might not really be about adultery. And neither are the scribes or the Pharisees that bring this woman to Jesus. They aren't here because they are outraged by a sinful act that has transpired. They are here, and they have brought her with them because they're threatened by Jesus. He is young. He is drawing crowds. He is interpreting the law in ways that unsettle the established order. He is, as they say, making trouble, and they want him to stop. So they try to set him up. If Jesus says, stone her, he violates Torah, because the law requires witnesses and a full legal process, which they have not provided, and Rome also has a reason to come after him because the Roman Empire has stripped local authorities of the right to carry out punishment like this. If Jesus says, don't stone her, he appears to contradict their interpretation of Mosaic law. Either way, they win, she and he lose. Like so many before and after her, this woman is just a pawn in their game. A human being who is caught up in systems of power that have no real interest of or care for her whatsoever. And we all know that this is not just some ancient story, right? We still live in a world that does this quite well, where people become cases or numbers, where stories get reduced to headlines that go too quickly from one to the other, where systems move quickly or really, really slowly, and humanity just gets lost in the process. We see it in courtrooms. We see it in prisons. We see it in our immigration and our healthcare systems. We see it in the way that survivors are questioned and blamed instead of being listened to and protected. Over and over and over again, we ask, what did they do? Why didn't they leave? Why didn't they speak sooner? And before we know it, the person most vulnerable becomes the one underneath the most scrutiny. And the system just keeps pushing forward and forward and forward. New Testament scholar Amy Jill Levine points out that the Greek word used here for test is actually the same word used when Satan tempts Jesus in the wilderness. So this isn't really a sincere theological question in front of us. This is another temptation. It's a test. But Jesus doesn't fall for their trap. Instead, he bends down and he starts to write in the dirt. And he doesn't say a single word. Now, I want to back up a little bit to give us a little context of where and when this story is taking place. This story comes on the heels of the Festival of Tabernacles, which is the last of the great fall feasts. So people are ready to celebrate. Thousands of pilgrims would pour into Jerusalem for 8 days. 8 days of feasting and living in makeshift shelters and tents. Thousands of people. Maybe you've been to a festival like this, I don't know. Thousands of people camping and celebrating and possibly participating in some extracurricular activities that humans do when they are far away from home and the wine is flowing freely. And some of them might just end up in other people's tents. It's true. One of the passages that is taught during this Festival of the Tabernacles is from the prophet Jeremiah. And it speaks of those who turn away from God being written in the dust. Did you catch that? Those who turn away from God are written in the dust. Jesus bends down and he writes in the dust when the religious leaders come forward with this woman. These leaders know their sacred stories. They know exactly what Jesus is referencing when he is sitting there writing without him having to say a single word. You are the ones who have turned away. And as we heard, they start to leave one by one. And then it's just Jesus and the woman. And he looks up and he asks, "Where are they? Has no one condemned you?" And she says, "No one, Lord." And he says, "Neither I do condemn you. Go and sin no more. Go and live." That's the whole verdict. Go and live. There's not an interrogation or a lecture about the choices that led her here. Just go and live. For a long time, this story has been preached as a lesson about being less judgmental. And yes, we could all use more grace and fewer stones. Amen? Amen. But this story is deeper than that. When Jesus bends down and writes in the dirt, when he refuses to engage in the questions that they have placed before him, when he redirects the confrontation, he is not just modeling kindness. He is engaging in an act of political and social resistance. He refuses to condemn the woman. He refuses to be an instrument of a system that requires someone to be sacrificed in order to make a point. And as Jesus so often does, he dismantles the architecture of the trap that has been set before him. And when you confront systems like that, when you call out power for strain from its purpose, it doesn't go quietly. Systems that benefit from injustice rarely give it up without a fight. This week, as I'm sure many of you heard, Dolores Huerta, labor icon, co-founder of the United Farm Workers, 95 years old, came forward and shared her story of how Cesar Chavez had harmed her repeatedly. And that she stayed silent for 60 years to protect the movement. Not the man, but the movement, the farm workers, to protect her people and their causes. She made a choice. Her choice. And this week, when she came forward, people had opinions about her silence, about her timing, about what she should have done and when. She is 95 years old, and the stones were so quickly in people's hands. And she is not the one who should be on trial. The question that Jesus presses us toward is not, what should she have done? The question is, what kind of systems require women to have to make that choice in the first place? What kind of institutions protect the powerful at the cost of the vulnerable? What kind of movements, what kind of churches demand that someone be sacrificed so that the work can go on? Because the work cannot continue on those terms. Not if we believe that every person brought before the crowd is a human being, not a prop or a pawn or collateral damage. This story is about resisting anything religious, political, cultural that robs people of their dignity and honor. Later on, Jesus says it quite plainly. You have neglected the weightier matters of the law: justice, mercy, and faithfulness. Not abandon the law, but you have forgotten what it was for. And in the dust, in the silence, in the refusal to condemn, Jesus shows us exactly what justice and mercy and faithfulness looks like. He kneels down. He resists their temptation. And he encourages the woman to go and live. Go and live. This is the good news for all of us today. May it be so. Amen.